Welcome to your daily writing habit. If you are writing a book or thinking about it, or maybe you've started writing a book but you need some help getting it done, you are in the right place. Good morning, everyone. I'm your host, Christine Whitmarsh. If you're looking for me online, look for Christine Inc., like that stuff we write with. Each day, I'm sharing with you the writing habits I've learned over my 20 years as a ghostwriter, book coach, and author. I have found that three things in particular have a huge impact on your success as an author, and they can even turn someone who barely sees themselves as a writer into a published book author. Those three things are writing fundamentals, productivity, and mindset habits. And here today on the show, super excited to have a good friend of mine on the show to talk about how to create a win-win relationship with your publisher or your self-publisher or maybe your publishing team is mom, wife, coach, and author of The Mindful Millionaire, my friend Leisa Peterson. Here's more about Leisa. Leisa Peterson is the Mindful Millionaire maker. As a coach, author, business growth strategist, and founder of Wealth Clinic, she helps people elevate their financial consciousness by realizing their true value and becoming financially empowered. Welcome, Leisa.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Christine.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, very excited to have you here. And so diving right in, how did your book, The Mindful Millionaire, come about? So what's it about? Who was it for? How did you come up with the idea to write it?
The book is written for people who have found themselves in a tangled, complicated relationship with money. And most of us know who we are. On one hand, we might have made money more important than other things. That would be my story. And we find ourselves making lots of choices and sacrifices to get the money. And then on the other side of the spectrum, because my book has kind of two audiences actually, are people who have found that money is just always filled with struggle and difficulty, and they haven't made maybe the sacrifices that the other group has made, but they suffer a lot because there isn't enough of it. They know that they've got some limiting beliefs, if you will, but they don't know how to change them. So the audience is really pivotal to kind of give you an idea that the book is about helping people transform their relationship with money.
That's awesome. And, I talk about mindset habits for authors here on the show, and it just seems like, money mindset habits can, no matter what you are, an author or creative, no matter what you do for a living, it just seems like those kind of creep into your life, whether you expect it or not.
Most definitely. And it's so close to us, and it started so early in life, like by age 5, it's been proven that kids already have their money story at least started. We don't realize that we're just, human sponges that are picking up, even if we're not working with money, we're picking up all the vibes, all the behaviors, all the patterns that our parents have with money from a really young age. And Cambridge University did a study, and they found that by 5, that's what's happening for us.
Wow, that's a really great factoid, but it's also like completely shocking. Like I never would have guessed that early. Is there something like developmentally that makes it like that age where kids are able to pick up on the money story, or kind of like, I'm just curious now because that's a really interesting fact.
Yeah, I think that it has a lot to do with the fact that money is so important in the lives that we lead these days. Like, it used to be you'd work on a farm and you'd be making food, and food was important, right? The animals and the vegetables was important. Well, now if you think about it from a little kid's perspective, they just go to the store with you and they watch, credit cards or checks or sometimes cash, like seriously, a lot of kids are like, well, money doesn't even need to be made. You just have this plastic thing and you swipe it and you get everything you want. And like, if you haven't talked about it, kids think that everything's for free because they don't see money being transferred. All they see is a card, and they don't know the story behind it. And I work with people who are in their 40s, 50s, even 60s, and they're like, nobody ever taught me about money. I'm still struggling. I still don't understand it. And as a result, my bank accounts reflect that struggle.
Wow, So interesting. I can already imagine just like the breadth of information in your book. So with your book, and I know a lot of authors are struggling with this decision. Can you walk us through your decision-making process that ultimately led you to publish traditionally rather than like independently or self-published?
Sure. It definitely did not come lightly. And I think I did not totally know, just like you said earlier, that I could ever be an author. I want to say that really clear. Like, I had a teacher in my MBA program write on a paper towards the end of that. So I would have been like 23 at the time, 24. He said, "You are the worst writer I've ever had in a class." So I just want everyone to understand. So I had some beliefs that I really had to work on, and it was true.
Yeah.
I always struggled with writing. I would avoid it like the plague. So then when I had this idea to write a book, crazy, because it's like, well, first you have to learn how to write. I got really lucky in that I started a business back in 2014. And for the first couple of years, I didn't really make much money doing it, but I blogged for the Huffington Post. And it's funny, you can go back and probably find like my first blog. And it was really simplistic. And I saw how much I was going to have to learn. But over the coming year, when I was blogging more and more for them and doing stuff on my own website, I started to find that I could explain some of these concepts that I had experienced in my work as a financial advisor and before that as a mortgage banker, and what I knew about money that was really different because I was also a mindfulness teacher. And so I wanted to bring these things together. And a pretty successful, let's say very successful agent saw those posts on the Huffington Post, and maybe after a year or so I think 2017, she reached out and she's like, "I want to be clear, like, I don't reach out to people, but I've been reading your posts, completely fascinated. I think you've got something very unique, and I would love to help you bring a book to reality." So how often does that happen? Probably not too often.
That's awesome. And you know what? And first of all, congratulations and well done. You made that happen, which is fantastic, through the consistency of creating content, and obviously as a, believing in yourself to ignore that horrible teacher who said that. Like, who would say that? That's terrible. So it's just wonderful that you pushed through that. And then, kind of like the pillars on the show here, the writing fundamentals, those came to you, I would imagine. The more you blogged, the more you learned about how to be a writer, productivity, just, doing those blog posts on a regular basis, producing the work, meeting your deadlines or whatever HuffPost sent for you. And then the mindset habits of believing you can do it. And then just, the passion you and knowledge and expertise you have in your subject matter. I'm sure that's what came through that really, shone through for that agent. So lots of great takeaways from that story.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of expedite it. So she ended up helping me for several years, and we agreed that I wasn't that great of a writer, but she felt like I could figure it out, and inspired me and answered questions and mentored me for years. And
awesome.
Jessica Fost at Bookends, literary agency, she has a huge team. It's just an amazing, amazing story to have that happen. But I want to go all the way to almost the end of the journey. And when I got my proposal done and I wrote the book, I would not let her sell anything until I had a book, at least the beginning of a book, or I thought I was done. I wasn't, but I thought I was done. She, at that moment when it was done, she's like, "This is awesome. We've done it. Like, you can do this now. Let's work on the proposal." And I was like, "You know what?" I got cocky and I was like, maybe I should just self-publish this. This is the most horrible conversation. I'm embarrassed to admit that I did this to Jessica, because Jessica was like, "I've just helped you for the past 4 years and now you're going to self-publish this?" And I was like, okay, I'm struggling because I have a lot of intellectual property in this book and I'm freaking out. It's not that I don't want to publish it traditionally, but I'm scared that I'm going to give away everything and I won't own the rights to this stuff. And so we went back and forth, and ultimately I was like, "I am embarrassed. I'm sorry. I really do need to go forward with this. You've explained to me that I don't want to be a professional book publisher. I don't want to take all of that on. I need help. And the book isn't where it needs to be. I believe that it will be better if we are able to sell it." And she was like, "Great." She put it out to bid. We got St. Martin's Press to come in, or St. Martin's Essential Collection, part of Macmillan Publishers, to put an amazing proposal together. And it was like, okay, we're off and running. And that's kind of how it came to be.
Yeah. And what I love there is how, because I am always encouraging my listeners here on the show, that self and traditional publishing, two different routes. They're each business decisions unto their own. And what I love there is that you freely admitted, I don't know what I don't know. You relied on an expert, and you gather the information, and you found the best business decision for you and your book, and you as an author, you as a businesswoman. So, that's the lesson I hope my listeners hear is, that you found someone who knew what you didn't know, and you gathered the information, and you were willing to learn, and great lessons there.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So speaking of your publisher, and when we were chatting recently, you were raving to me about them, which I always love to hear because win-win relationships are awesome. So can you share with us some of the things that have made your publisher relationship such a win-win relationship?
The first thing was the editor. My editor recently left and went to Mayo Clinic Books, but she's been in the business for 30 years, and she wanted the book published because she felt like she needed this book in her own life. That was what made it so appealing to her. And she also wanted a perennial seller, a book that would continue to do well 10, 20 years from now. She was looking for that, and she wanted something around money and self-help. So my book came at the right time. Because of that, she was very personally involved in what we were creating together. However, what's so funny is when we first met and we talked about, I'm going to send you this, the manuscript. And I said, I can't wait to get your feedback, your thoughts, your suggestions. And she said, whoa, stop right there. She said, this is your book. I will not be contributing in the way that you kind of indicated I would. Like, this is your book. I will put what you want in this book. I will ask questions when you have not fully developed an idea, or when there are things that aren't working for, the reader. Like, you just need to switch it up. It doesn't make sense, or it's not well written in the way that you could communicate an idea. I will call that out, but it is your ideas. And so I've heard lots of different stories over the years, and I don't have anything to compare it to, but I will say she made me take a big leap, because there was an idea of like, you're going to help me get through this. And instead it was like, I need to take full responsibility for everything that's happening here, and she's going to help me do that.
Yeah, and I love that, because that's another thing that I kind of preach to authors is that's your, in many cases, picture on the cover. That's certainly your name on the cover. And there's a lot of authors, like towards the end, especially because, you've been through this, Leisa, so, the 20,000 rounds of editing, and you get to the end, you're just like, I just can't read my book anymore. And it's so tempting to just, is there somebody I can delegate this to? Can just somebody else like find any remaining edits? And it's like, what it comes down to is, that's your name on the cover. So I'm glad that she had that talk with you, because that's another one of the kind of frequent drums that I bang on here in the show. That's your name on the cover. So ultimately, the buck stops there.
Yeah. Well, because of the relationship we had. So they bought the book, I think, in like February of 2019. And then I went back and had to make I knew that I could do better. And so I think I developed and wrote and supplied by maybe early May, what I thought was the next, the right version. And then she came back by end of June, and there were like 5,000 comments in the 90,000 words. And I ended up I rewrote the book over the next 2 months. From her comments, I rewrote the whole entire book. And then that was it, though. She was like, holy crap, I can't believe you did it. Like, most people don't have that to shut down their life for 2 months and just only focus on revising and restructuring the book. And I did it. And I think when I gave it back to them by Labor Day, that was it. They were like, you're done. So that's an unusual story too, like, especially for a first-time author. Most people, I think, would need many revisions. And then there were a few things we worked on in the fall with fact-checking. So the book was published a year later, so June of 2020. But the reason I liked the team, just going beyond the editor, is I had a publicist and a marketing person, and they're both still at St. Martin's. They're both totally still 100% committed to the book. And since, probably 8 months before, probably even longer than that, before the book came out, we were working together to come up with what we could do to help the book have a great, launch. So they helped me through that whole thing. And they continued to bring different people or different opportunities to me, whether we got an opportunity or not. They told me what they were working on. Like for a while, Goop and Gwyneth Paltrow, they were looking at they were looking at the book and if they were going to sell it on the website. And we ultimately didn't get there, but it was exciting and super cool because I would have never gotten that opportunity. They also got me an interview to, not the interview itself, but a lot of these big shows, you're meeting with the producers and they're deciding if you would be a good fit or not. And so they would get me in the door. I had to close the deal. And then if it led to more things, then I had to take care of that. But they provided many opportunities in that regard.
That's awesome. And so definitely seeing the win-win part. Your commitment to it, you're just really like taking the direction that you got from them. Obviously, your editor is fantastic that, you got all that amazing feedback that you were able to rewrite your manuscript. So do you have any other, like the commitment and following through and just kind of like buckling down and doing the work? Do you have any other kind of like tips for authors, no matter how they publish? Because even like if you're self-published, you still have your, team of people that you're working with that are relying on you to do your job and meet your deadlines and and create a great product, whether it's your cover designer, people can hire a publicist separately, everything like that. So do you have any other tips for authors about how they can make their relationship with their publishing team, whatever that may look like, a win-win relationship?
I also hired a consultant probably for about 6 or 7 months, but then I realized that I didn't really have the kind of resources she was looking for me to pay. So I ultimately was like, you've given me the template of the things that we need to do, but me and my team inside of Wells Clinic were then doing a pretty big scale launch that involved tying in with my courses and my programs and the things I have been learning for the past 8 years about digital marketing. So we did run a huge campaign. We sold several thousand books in the first, I think, month or so. And that was because more than anything about me showing up for that launch and having a huge, launch team of people that were sharing it with their communities and on podcasts and radio shows. And we did a ton of stuff that they just supported us. Like the publisher supported that, but we were doing all of that, with me leading the charge.
And that's such an important point because I think there is still like this mistaken notion that if you go with a traditional publisher, they'll just kind of do everything and you can just, go and sit in a beach chair in Fiji with your tropical drink with a little umbrella in it. And I can totally tell that it's not, I know that it's not like that and, certainly not in your case. So I would imagine like lots of social media content. Just lots of work because there's that mistaken notion that the publisher will do all your marketing.
Yeah. We didn't have that one, so that's good. And the publisher appreciated us, and then they found other things, and I can go back to them and be like, hey, do you know anybody here, or could you help me get on this show, or could you provide an introduction? And I actually have not taken advantage of that as much as I should, and the book continues to sell more and more copies, so I think this will be a long-term, relationship that will continue to grow and blossom. And I love that they're there and available. And then they recently ran a promotion for like $1.99 ebook, and we sold over 1,000 copies, plus audiobooks, plus physical copies. Just, I'm glad that they did that because it's like they really believe in it. And then they saw us go to the top of their book list, book buying, like top 100 of all the essential books available. We hit that list and they were like, wow, that's pretty amazing. That doesn't normally happen. So it's just a continuous ongoing partnership that I feel like we're a part of together.
That's awesome. And I see the work on both sides. And yeah, it's long term. That's another thing I'm always saying to authors. It's like your launch day, that's not the end of the race. In many ways, that's the beginning of the foot race,
Yes, very much so.
Yeah. And I can tell you're so passionate about, obviously, that's why the book is probably doing so well, the content and the things that you teach. Do you have any kind of like story, whether it's a coaching client or a personal story or a reader story, that really shows why you love this subject matter in the Mindful Millionaire just as much as you obviously love it?
I was at a conference this past weekend, and I spent a lot of time with one of my clients from like 4 or 5 years ago, who was really pivotal when I was writing the book and the stories that were happening and kind of learning what was going on. And it was so fun because when we first started working together, she had had a blog and ended up selling it, and then realized she was ready for a big, big leap. And it was just a blog that was just making a few $1,000s maybe a year, nothing big, but she was like, I'm ready to do business differently. And she knew there were things holding her back, but they were so close to her that she couldn't see what it was. She just knew I have self-doubt, but I don't know why. I don't know why it's holding me back. And this mindset stuff is getting in my way. And so in the course of working together and applying the principles that I teach in the book, she was able to very, very quickly kind of drop away all of these stories of being less than or not being seen as a player in the world at the level she wanted to be. And I use that word player because I do see, like, she's just so connected now and famous in what she does, but she wasn't showing up as that person. And I knew she had that potential. And just by maybe a month or two, we ended up business coaching, but at first it's always mindset coaching for me. And if that helps someone, then they can decide, if they want to work with me more on the details. But just in like a month of working on the mindset, she was a completely different person and went on to build this business that I'm guessing will be at 7 figures this year, and wasn't that long ago. And just watching her grow and grow this beautiful foundation and be comfortable being famous and speaking at events. And it's just absolutely amazing. So that's why I like what I do so much, is watching that transformation.
That is fantastic. I love that story. So finally, given the theme of the show here, habits, what role, Leisa, do habits play in your life, whether it's writing, or what are your top kind of go-to habits for success?
The top habit I have is meditation. So I've been a daily meditator for 23 years, going on 23 years. And that is the cornerstone of everything. So in the morning, in addition to just the meditation of focusing on, what it is that I want to create for my day, how I want to feel, how I'm feeling in the moment, and how that can be shifted just by awareness. So that's what sets me up for success. It brings me a lot of peace and self-understanding and compassion, because running a business is pretty brutal, and it can be really easy to get focused on the negative and, wonder what you're doing wrong, and maybe there's something wrong with you and all this stuff that you go through. Meditation grounds me, brings me back home. And even something like writing, I think I was pretty burnt out after the whole process had happened. I recently did a writing retreat, and I was like, I create content a lot, and probably my next book will be more content oriented because I'm creating it naturally, and it's more of like taking what I teach already and just putting it into book form, different than the Mindful Millionaire, which was like a lot of stories and a lot of different things woven in. I don't know if I'll ever write a book like the Mindful Millionaire again. It was just a lot of work. So writing for me now is more tied into content creation, helping my clients understand the things they need to do in their business. And that's great for now. And we'll see what happens in the future, but it's a little different than when I was getting up at 3:30 a.m. and writing till 7 a.m. every day to be able to write that book. Yeah.
My goodness. See, there's that commitment again. Love it. There's those great habits. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Oh, where's the best place for people to go? Is there like a central hub website where people can learn more about you, get a copy of your book, contact you, stuff like that?
Perfect. There's the Wealth Clinic. So Wealth Clinic, just as it sounds.com, is a great place to learn more about the business and kind of what I'm doing to help people. We also have mindfulmillionairebook.com, and you can see a trailer, a video that we made in Hawaii about the book, which is super fun. And you can learn more about the book and the podcast that goes with the book.
Awesome. Thank you. I'll make sure I put those links in the show notes. And thank you so much for being on the show today, Leisa. It's a long time in coming, so I'm glad we made it happen.
I really appreciate this. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the listeners.
Yeah. And speaking of my listeners, thank you all for joining me here on Your Daily Writing Habit, where I am helping you write and finish writing an awesome book. Be sure and drop by my Inc. Authors group on Facebook to connect with other authors and also publishing resources. I'll drop that in the show notes as always. Until tomorrow, happy writing.